Right, this is our demo on 1-point perspective with multiple vanishing points and incline and decline planes. So I've squared up my paper. This is the 14 by 17 inch paper. Squared it up to my board. And make sure you title your paper. I'm going to put it here on the bottom just for convenience. One point, multiple vanishing points with incline and decline planes. So make sure you label your drawings and also date them. So I'm going to start with a horizontal line above the midpoint. And I'm going to start with a vanishing point somewhere off center. So this is fine right there. Now if you're going to notice, I'm not going to be using the structural approach very much with this. This is as much of the structural approach as I'm going to do. There's no need to do a diagonal vanishing point for the purposes of this drawing. So somewhere towards the bottom, not at the bottom, but somewhere towards the bottom on the right, I'm going to place a horizontal line about 3 to 4 inches. About 4 inches is good. We want it kind of large. And on the left and right side, I'm going to draw a line converging to the vanishing point. And I'm going to create a plane. Now it's not going to be a square plane, just a plane. Remember, you can use the bottom of your straight edge or your T-square to create your horizontal line. Now I'm keeping my lines fairly light. Now what we're going to have is we're going to have a series of planes, or let's say like a long walkway or sidewalk or what have you. And we're going to have a curve. We're going to have a curve to the left, possibly to the right a little bit, and then to the left again. So in order to do this, remember we do have multiple vanishing points. I need to make sure I label everything. So this is going to be my first vanishing point. So I'm going to label this as VP1. Now I already have this plane here. It's something that we're used to seeing already in majority of our drawings that we do in this class. Now I'm going to place an additional vanishing point here. Now this is not 2-point perspective. This is still in 1-point perspective, and I'll explain that in a few moments. So I'm going to label this as vanishing point 2 or VP2. So we already have this plane here, and we're going to have another plane that converges to the right vanishing point. I'm sorry, to vanishing point 2. Now why this is still 1-point perspective is because we still have horizontal planes or horizontal lines that are parallel to the horizon line. So like the previous one, I need to make sure, the previous plane, I need to make sure I place a horizontal line to designate the end of the plane. So we have one plane, and then we have two. And I'm going to reiterate these lines a little bit just to make them a little bit more visible. So again, we have one plane, and we have two. The second one going to the second vanishing point. But this is not a right vanishing point like you would have in 2-point perspective. All right, now I'm going to have it slightly curved to the left. So I'm going to place a vanishing point right over here. And this is going to be labeled vanishing point 3 or VP3. And at the end of this plane, I'm going to draw a line converging to vanishing point 3. Now you're going to have a lot of lines going all over the place, so it's going to be really important to keep track of all of them. All right, so again, as the first and second plane, I need to terminate this one. So I'm going to place a horizontal line. You notice it's a little bit, the depth is a little bit more shallow than the previous two. I know this one's a little bit thicker, but this is just for the sake of a demonstration. And we do want to create an illusion that there is foreshortening, or a foreshortening of depth from one front edge to the back edge, or the front of the plane to the back of the plane. All right, so we have 1, 2, and 3 planes. Now I'm going to continue to curve it. If you notice, it's curving to the right. Now it's curving to the left. I'm going to continue that. I'm going to put another one, another vanishing point here to the left of vanishing point 3, and this is going to be VP4, or vanishing point 4. So this is going to be a subtle curve. And as always, make sure your pencils are nice and sharp, otherwise it will defeat the purpose of doing a precise drawing. And like the previous one, I need to terminate the plane with a horizontal line. Now it's going to be important to make sure that you follow your lines, to make sure, follow the vanishing point all the way down to the end of the plane, so you can see where the end of your plane actually should be. You don't want to draw a line to draw a horizontal line to one of the other converging lines, because that could be very confusing. So it would be important to finish each plane as you move along. Okay, the last one is going to go all the way down to vanishing point 5, and I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive with this one. It's going to be a little bit further out. Okay, I'm going to label this vanishing point 5. It's not going to seem that aggressive because I've been gradually going to the left after vanishing point 2. There we go. And with this one's going a little bit further out, and what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to terminate it right away. I'm going to have this go a little bit further, because I'm going to create what's called an incline plane. So let me make this a little bit darker. And I will terminate it, but for now, I'm going to keep this a little bit longer so I can illustrate what I'm going to do. So I'm going to keep this one a little bit longer. I'm going to end it somewhere right in here. I'm going to switch pencils while I have a chance. Get a nice point. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planes. And at this plane, I'm going to create an incline for this plane. So I need what's called a reference line. So I'm going to create a vertical line above and below the horizon line on vanishing point 5. And this reference line is going to create what's called a trace point, where we're going to create an auxiliary vanishing point, or a trace point, where we will converge lines up to that auxiliary vanishing point. So let's see. And we're going to be a little bit more aggressive with this and see how obnoxious we can make this. Okay, so we'll put our trace point up here. I'm going to label this as TP1. This is trace point 1. So before we establish that, allow me to establish or reiterate the horizontal lines terminating each plane. That way you can easily see where I'm going with this. All right, so we can see it curve to the right and then curve to the left. So now I'm going to draw two lines converging to this trace point. And a trace point is simply an auxiliary vanishing point that doesn't exist on the horizon line, but it is contingent on the horizon line to successfully draw something in perspective. So a trace point creates inclines and declines. So a trace point is also an auxiliary vanishing point. So I'm just going to label it as AUXVP. Okay, now like the previous planes, we still need to terminate the plane. So I'm going to be a little bit aggressive with this one. I'm going to make this up, bring this one up a little bit higher, or make it a little bit longer. Not really obnoxious, but just so you can simply see the incline. And I will line this up with the trace point so you can see the incline. And while I'm at it, I will go all the way down and line up each vanishing point with each converging line. So you can see how successful this drawing can be. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to see reds and blues on camera, so I'll try to do this periodically. Also, this is a good reminder to make sure that your drawing tools are clean. So I'm not going to use this one anymore, and I'm going to switch to a nice brand new one. Okay, so now you can see a curve, you can see it transition upward to an incline plane, and now I'm going to have a decline to another trace point. And let me see, I'm going to have a decline to here. This is going to be trace point 2. Now with trace points, you can have trace points above and below the horizon line. When you have a trace point above the horizon line, it creates an incline plane. When you have one below the horizon line, or below eye level, it becomes a decline plane. So with this, I'm going to draw two lines converging to it. And keep them kind of light. And you can actually see, you can see a decline. We see these situations all the time. It doesn't seem like we see these situations all the time, but we often do. As you know, at Mount Sac, we have many hills, and because of that, we have walkways that traverse up and down, especially by the library and also by the main admissions building. Okay, so we have it converging up to the trace points on the horizon line and up to the trace point here to create this incline plane. And now we have this plane converging down or declining to trace point 2. Which creates a decline plane. And because this is going to have an overlap, I'm not going to draw my object line where it overlaps to simply illustrate that overlap. And I'm going to shade this a little bit darker underneath so you can simply see it. And this one's going to be shaded a little bit lighter. Simply so it separates itself from the previous planes. All right. And now I'm going to create a flat plane that is parallel with all of these planes by drawing this to vanishing point 5, where we originated from. And there we go. Incline and decline planes. And of course, multiple vanishing points. Now, altogether, these are all multiple vanishing points. But usually when we refer to multiple vanishing points, we refer to ones that are on the horizon line. And we do have some auxiliary vanishing points, or in other words, trace points, to create an incline plane and decline plane. Now, one of the reasons why this is a horizontal flat plane is because it is converging back to the horizon line. And this is our eye level, or the eye level.